going so far as to imagine that your feet are on the floor. So you feel that even pressure between the front and back of the foot, the inner and outer edge of the foot, and then each of the toes pressing down into the floor. On your next exhale, drop the knees into the chest. Maybe take a little rock from side to side. On our next exhale, roll over onto the right, press your left palm into the floor to come back up to sitting. So we'll do a little experiment for our seated poses today. We're going to take our mat and just roll the edge of it a little bit. And I'll turn to face you guys. Just roll up the front edge to give yourself a little bit of height, maybe about halfway down your mat. And we're going to sit on the edge. Think about placing the sitting bones, the pointy parts at the bottom of the pelvis, right on top of that roll, so that you feel that little tilt forward in the pelvis. You get that nice neutral curve in the lower back, that natural curve, and then the belly is nice and long. Take a breath here. On your exhale, the shoulder blades release down. Feel that reach up through the crown of the head. So tailbone up through the crown of the head is nice and long. From here, we'll take our inhale, sweep the arms up. Feeling equal length on the left and right side of the rib cage. On our exhale, take a twist to the right. Sweep the right hand behind you. Left hand to the outside of the right knee. If it feels like that's twisting you a little bit too far, you can always take the hand in the front. That's always an option. And what we want to do with the right hand is just give yourself a little bit of support so that you can keep the pelvis rotated forward. You can maintain that neutral curve in the lower back, but make sure that the right shoulder doesn't start to hike up. Sweep up through center. Equal lengths on both sides of the body, reaching up through the fingertips. On your exhale, twist to the left. Feeling those little movements in the body with your breath. The inhale lengthens up the spine. You can almost feel it go up each vertebrae like a little ripple. Your exhale gives you that maybe millimeter or two to deepen your twist. Back up to center, length through the rib cage. Try to feel each individual rib spreading out to get that space. Exhale, hands come into the heart. And release the hands. So let's take the legs out straight. Now, as you're sitting on this rolled up mat, make sure that you're not getting any numbness or tingling in your legs. And of course, this goes for any yoga pose ever. Numbness, tingling, never good, because that means there's compression in a nerve. But if you're sitting up on something, especially in your seated poses, it has the risk of putting a little bit of pressure on your sciatic nerve. So if you get that tingling down the back of the legs, make sure that you readjust. From here, let's take our inhale and just start out nice and tall. Feel that lift in the lower back, keep the belly long, so we don't want any rounding through the belly. As you take your exhale, come a third of the way down, stop, take an inhale here. Lengthen even farther, space in between the ribs. Feel that the pelvis is rolling forward. Take another exhale, a couple inches farther down. Inhale, reach out through the fingertips, reach out through the crown of the head. If you feel like you have a little bit more mobility here, take another exhale, lower yourself down. Once you're down into that pose, take an inhale, lift out of it just about an inch, and see if you can get the heart a little bit higher. One of the most common problems that people run run into with forward bends, especially this one, because you feel like if you push yourself a little bit farther, you're like, oh, look how flexible I'm getting in my yoga practice. You know, I can almost put my head onto my legs now. What's going to happen though is that as you pull yourself forward, there's going to be stress right here in your lower back. It's your sacroiliac joint, the part where the pelvis and the spine join each other. A little spot on either side of the lower back, and that joint is going to start to get pulled apart. So what we want to try and do is lift out of the pose, take the stress out of that joint, and bring it into the hip joint. That's where that fold is supposed to be happening. Another option here is if you feel like you're really tempted to reach for your feet, or if your hands don't quite want to reach, you can take a block and put it on your legs and maybe put your hands onto the block instead. But by taking that little lift out of the pose, you're actually going to get more out of it. You're going to get a more focused stretch for the hamstring rather than pulling on your back. Legs out into a nice wide V. Now this pose in particular, you're going to find that since we're working on hamstrings and hips at the same time, there's a lot of different things that come into play here. You have the option to sit on your block if you want to lift yourself up. If you feel like you're shortening through your belly, lift yourself up and see what that does for your hips. You feel like you can get a lot more length out of your lower back that way. And it really doesn't matter what you sit yourself up on. You can be on a rolled mat, you can have a towel, if you have a blanket and you want to roll that up, anything that gives yourself a lift. What it does is the hips aren't at as strong of an angle because the feet are lower than the pelvis. So that's what's giving us that little extra bit of mobility there. We'll take our inhale, lift the arms up. So find that length in the upper body and then don't compromise as you come down. Take your exhale, a little reach forward. Once you're down, take your inhale, find extra length. Your next exhale settles the hands down to the mat. Take your inhale, lift up through the chest. Exhale, fold from the hips. Now as we're holding here, make sure that gravity doesn't start to pull down on the legs too much. Keep a little micro bend in the knees. A nice way to safely deepen your forward bend here is to press the hands down into the floor and then just gently traction them toward you. What you'll feel is that the chest starts to lift up and you get some length down through the torso. On our inhale, let's walk ourselves up. Place the right hand on the inside of the right leg. On your inhale, open the left arm back. Let's take an exhale, side bend. Sweep the left arm up over your head. I'm working on keeping the shoulders stacked. Right shoulder is directly on top of the left shoulder so that we're not curving forward, we're not caving into the chest. And then we can help ourselves with our eye gaze. If your neck is okay, turn, look up at the top corner of the room, over to the left, and you'll feel that as you do, left shoulder rolls back, chest opens up. On your next inhale, come back up to center. Nice and tall through the spine. Place the left hand on the inside of the left leg. We'll inhale the right arm open. Exhale, nice side bend. Right arm arches up over the head. Maybe turning your gaze to the right corner. block out. And then roll ourselves over onto hands and knees. Let's curl our toes underneath. On your exhale, roll back into down dog. Working yourself into that down dog, take your time pedaling the feet out, warming up the calves, warming up the hamstrings. It's really important to remember that as you practice yoga, it's really an exercise in patience, because it's not months or even a year to get toward a lot of the more advanced poses. It's more like years, decades, depending on what pose it is that you're trying to attain. So it's really about giving your body as much time as it needs, and being okay with the fact that maybe even certain poses aren't going to be attainable, and being okay with that. From here, let's take an inhale, roll forward into high plank. Soften the elbow joints. Make sure that the elbows are not locked back. Shoulder blades are firmly pressed against the rib cage, and the weight is in the thumb and the index finger. Checking in with the lower back. If you need those knees, you can always drop down. On your exhale, slowly lower down, reaching strongly back through the elbows to keep the head of the arm bone really firm in the socket. On your inhale, roll up into cobra. So as you come into cobra, keep the legs relaxed. That's going to keep some of the tension out of the lower back. Arms are right against the sides of the body, and those elbows are still reaching back for that wall behind you. It's going to keep your neck long. And I like to keep the gaze really low. So some schools of yoga are going to tell you that as you come up into a back bend, you want to lift your head and keep your gaze up to the front of the room. I'm really not a fan of that, because that's something that we do a lot during our day. We carry a lot of tension in the back of the neck. I like to do more lengthening through the back of the neck. So keep your gaze low. Think about reaching the skull away from you. Take one more inhale. Feel that in between the shoulder blades. On your exhale, release down. As we make our transition back into child's pose, be really mindful of what your arms do. So don't let your elbows wing out to the sides. Take your inhale, press yourself straight up. Elbows are pointing back, and then lower yourself back. Next inhale, let's pull forward into table. Square your table off. So anytime you come from child's pose up to table, you usually need to rearrange the knees so that they're underneath the hips. Curl your toes underneath. Take your exhale, roll back into down dog. Another thing that's really important when you're practicing, depending on what kind of class you're in, is to know your options and to know when you want to give yourself an option. So even if the teacher isn't calling, maybe you've been in down dog a little bit too long and you need child's pose, always know that that's available to you. And then same thing if the teacher says either stay here or maybe take this option, be okay. If you want to stay in that pose that you're at right now, perfectly fine. Don't let your ego push yourself too far into the pose. From here, let's use an exhale. Step the right foot up in between your hands. Coming through our lunge. On your next inhale, step the left foot up to meet the